So I'm working on a Stihl Formix unit, the KM131R, which is their most powerful Formix unit that they make in terms of the trimmer slash combi unit. This would be the FS131R, 38cc. These machines are just absolute monsters whenever they run correctly. The low end torque is just ridiculous on them. But I was having a problem with the valve lash not staying adjusted correctly. You could tell because the compression would be very high when you go to start it intermittently. So I figured this is a common problem on them. The camshaft, cam wheel, the lobe often melts down from high heat. So I went to pull it out, and lo and behold, oh, perfect condition. Nothing's melted down on this at all. Looks like new almost. The backing plate's still intact. The decompression release is still functioning correctly. No issue there. I had a new one here to compare it to, and they are identical in terms of whenever you put the pin that it rocks on inside, same amount of wiggle. Everything's fine on here. So then the next common issue is that the bore in the block often gets run out. It's just a bushing, it's a steel on steel. Or I should say, I believe these blocks are aluminum actually, and a steel pin in aluminum. So that often doesn't go well. But whenever I put this in here, we have no wiggle at all. Works perfectly fine. And the same thing that the rocker arms ride on, no wiggle at all. So I took the pin that the cam rides on, put it on the cam cover backing plate. No wiggle at all, nice and tight fit. But then whenever I took the pin that the rocker arms went on and put that in the cover, it's all run out. It overbored itself. It's got about a 1/16 of an inch of wiggle room on the top. And you can see how they design these. They have a little port right there that the oil can go down into so they don't get overboard. You can even see the oil in here in the corners. But unfortunately, this plate is going to need to be replaced. The problem of the camshafts melting down has all but almost been mitigated because they added this ramp that directly funnels oil onto the camshaft. I've heard that this has greatly fixed the problem of these camshafts getting melted down. You can see when this is on here, this little ramp puts oil right, if we can zoom in, there we go, right on the top of the lobe there. Whenever that's running, it feeds the oil right onto there. So I thought it was going to be a simple thing of just changing out the cam, but instead I had to order this plate backing cover, which was no problem. This was about $20. I'd much prefer this back plate to be overboard than the block, because then you have to throw in a new short block. And I bought this unit used for fairly cheap. This was not mine from brand new. I believe 90% of the problems that people have with these bores getting overboard and camshafts melting down is because they're not using a good quality 2-cycle oil. They're using something cheap or even like a True Fuel. The best oil to use in these is the Stihl HD mix full synthetic that comes in the little gray bottles. People don't like that oil for their 2-cycle units. They say it actually causes a lot of problems, but that oil was really engineered for the Formix units. It's designed to not fully burn off, which is why people have a lot of problems with it in the 2-cycle, but in the Formix, you need it to stay behind. You can see, look at all the oil that's in here. This unit I bought previously was always ran on True Fuel, and this was just half a tank of my own gas. That is the grayish brown steel oil that's left behind. That oil goes into these engines, and it needs to stay there. It cannot just flash off. So that oil is very important to use if you want to prolong the life of these units without these bores getting overboard. You can see the engine block bores don't have those little oil cutouts. Actually, they do. Right down there. I'm not sure about the cam one, though. This looks a little bit crusty or a little bit worn out. That's just this back metal plate on here. just vibration and everything, but it's the hole is not overboard. This engine was going to needed a reseal anyway. It was absolutely covered in oil from the front and rear crankshaft seal. That is actually quite common with these. The crankshaft seals will go out on them. So I cleaned all this off, but this whole thing, you couldn't see anything. It had about a ½ inch of oil and gunk built up on it. This unit was actually never used for grass at all. It was from a person who resealed driveways, so they always had a power broom on it, and they would just weed whack grass out of the cracks. So it never had was never used for landscaping per se, but it had a very heavy brush on it, so the engine probably always ran hot. So that's all the reason I just wanted to show you guys is, if you're having problems with your valve lash, don't automatically assume it's your cam gear. Although it could be, especially in the older units. This is from 2016, date of manufacture, right there. I'm not sure the exact year they switched to these cam plates that have the little ramp for the oil. But you can still see they are not perfect by any means. This hole overboard like crazy. And I think that's more so because it's right at the top. You can see they put that oiler hole right at the top. They would have done better to put this at the bottom where it gets more oil. This is so close to the gasket maker. The gasket maker possibly could have even been plugging it up if they over applied it. You can see how much is up here. So that's just something to check on when you're doing these Stihl 4-mix units.